Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Country Girl with Kathy Jarvis. And it's time to plant the potatoes. But there's a few things you have to decide before you ever get to the point of actually planting the potatoes. You have to decide if you want brown skins, red skins, or purple skin potatoes. And then you have to decide what color you want the flesh. You know, the inside when you cut it open. Do you want it to be white? Do you want it to be yellow? Or do you want it to be purple? Because those are the different varieties that you have to choose from. Now, another thing you have to decide is whether you're going to go and buy the potatoes from a catalog, from the big stores, or are you going to use the ones from the groceries? Yes, you can use those, but with caution. If you decide to use the ones from the groceries, I would definitely recommend that you do those in containers because they are not certified to be blight-free or disease-free or fungus-free. So you don't want to introduce that into your ground. But they can be used, especially if they're organic. I prefer to buy mine online through a catalog just because there's a more variety of potatoes to get. Now, another thing, once you decide what potato you want, do some research. Now, I have a clay soil, and I'm going to be planting mine in the ground. So I wanted something that I could just not heal up, not have to worry about. So I decided to go with a determinate potato. Now, this is something that's not usually written in the catalog, so you have to do your own research as to which ones are determinate, which ones are indeterminate. So this year I decided on 3 different types. I'm doing a Yukon Gem, I'm doing a Gold Rush, and I'm doing a Red Pontiac. So do your research on them, find out whether they're determinate or indeterminate, and how deep you should plant them, and all this stuff. Now, all potatoes you can heal up. They will, there's no reason not to. Except if you want to be lazy, like I want to be. I got a big enough garden. I don't want to be having to go and heal up potatoes all the time. So I can just, if I see a potato coming towards the surface, throw some dirt over it and keep on moving. And sandy soil and raised beds, it's easier to dig down. This clay, if it gets dry, it gets hard to dig. And when it's hard to dig, you run the chance of slicing your potatoes when you're digging them. So these are the ones I chose this year, and I did my research on them. My Yukon Gold, they say to space about 12 inches apart, 12 to 15. Any closer than that, you'll have more potatoes, but they'll be smaller. So if you want a good sized potato, plant them a little bit farther apart. They should be planted about 3 to 5 inches deep. They spread from 18 to 24 inches wide, so you might want to make your paths, if you're doing them in ground in a straight row, you might want to make your paths about 36 inches or so, enough to let the tiller go through them without destroying the leaves and stuff. The Yukon Gem has a yellow flesh, a yellow center that's kind of buttery tasting. Now my other one was I think it's early potato, yeah. It takes 80 to 100 days to mature. Now, that's an important thing to note because you know that after 80 days, you should be looking at your potatoes to start harvesting. So keep that in mind. My other one I chose was a Gold Rush. It will grow to about 20 inches tall. And it's, again, spaced at 12 to 15 inches. And 3 to 5 inches deep plant. And this one has kind of a russet type potato. And again, it's 80 to 100 days before it matures. Now, my Red Pontiac, which is also determinate, takes from 90 to 100 days to mature. And it's basically planted the same way. Now, all these should be planted at least 2 to 3 weeks before your last frost. Because they do like a little bit cooler weather. They don't like real hot, but they do like faux sun. So now that you've chosen what potato you want, the next thing you have to decide is if you're going to chit it or if you're just going to throw it into the ground. A chitted potato will grow faster. That's not saying that if you just take a potato and put it in the ground, it will eventually grow, but you lose some of the control that you have if you chit them beforehand. Another thing, when you do decide to chit them, do not take them out of the bag and mix them all together. Make sure you label which ones you have so you know when to start harvesting. So we'll look at what we're doing here next. Your potatoes most likely will come in a mesh bag like this, and they will probably be pretty skin with no eyes very much. So what you do is you take them and you put them out in a warm, cool, warm room, not really hot. You keep them away from direct sunlight, but you do have sunlight. And the reason being is you want them to form these little chits, these little eyes, these little shoots. Now, if you decide that you want to put them in the dark, you're going to end up with something like this. It's long, it's skinny, it's looking for sunlight, and it's going to be a weak potato. Even the sprout's weak. So you want to get rid of those. So always chit them in some type of light. Now, another thing you have to decide is whether you're going to cut them in half or cut them in sections, or if you're going to leave them whole. Now, there's no really reason to cut them, just that you'll get more potatoes, maybe. The rule of thumb is if they weigh 2 ounces or less, you plant them whole. If they're bigger than 2 ounces, then you can cut them in half, only if there's eyes, sprouted eyes on both halves. Like this potato is bigger than 2 ounces, but there's no eyes on this end of the potato. So there's no reason to cut this potato at all. Now, cutting them is simple. I had another video done, but the sound did not come through on it. So I have to do this over, and I don't have any more that need to be cut. So we're just going to tell you about it. You just take a knife, a clean knife, and cut straight across, making sure there's at least 2 eyes on each half. And then you can't plant it right after you cut it. You have to wait about a week for this to scab over. See how this is hard? It's not pushing in. That's all scabbed over and ready to plant. Now, another good rule is only 2 eyes per potato. If you have any more eyes, cut them out like I did this one and leave them cure. The reason being is if you have a whole bunch of eyes on the potato, more than 2, maybe 3, but not many more, each one of these will sprout up and produce a potato. All from this little teeny weeny part that they're getting their nutrients from, which means that their potato, that plant is going to be weaker than the other ones, and probably will not produce as many potatoes. So after they've cured for a week, at least, they got this nice scab on, then you can take them out into the garden and plant them. Now, I've already taken the cover off. I put a cover over the potato patch, and I've taken that off and waiting for a pretty day to go out there and till this land up and get these potatoes in. Most people put them in on Good Friday, but this year Good Friday was kind of wet. Yeah, and it also was not a good sign of the moon to be planting potatoes. So this Thursday and Friday is perfect weather, hopefully. I've had the potato bed covered most of the year. This half was in black plastic. This half was supposed to be in clear plastic. It blew off of that end, and as you see, the clear plastic did do nothing to prevent the weeds. Let's see what about the black plastic. See what's underneath it. Well, I don't see many weeds. Okay, there's hardly any weeds underneath the black plastic part. The clear plastic kind of disintegrated more so than what the black did. And as you can see, it did not keep the weeds down at all. So we've had a lot of rain the last couple of days. I'm hoping to put in the potatoes next week. So I'm going to take the cover off. I'm going to let this dry out really well. Come in here and I'll flatten it out and use the tiller on it and try to get this level so we can plant the potatoes next week. All right, I took the tiller and with the help of my husband, we tilled up the potato patch. Then I used my trusty little cultivator hoe over there and my trowel, and I made each of my troughs 6 inches deep. I put the potatoes in between 12 and 15 inches apart, depending upon how many potatoes I had, because I did not want to take one row. I did not want to take one variety into a half a row and then start a half a row. I wanted each row to be a true type. So on the end here, I have the Gold Rush, 2 rows of those. And then I have 2 rows of Yukon Gem. And I have 3 rows of Red Pontiac. Now next, when I planted the potatoes, it's important to remember to plant them 3 to 5 inches deep, and to make sure that your eyes are facing upward. And I like to dig a little so that my eyes are just at no more than 3 inches deep. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover all these potatoes. So that's the next thing. Okay, after I've covered the potatoes with the 3 to 6 inches of soil, I watered them down well, and then I topped them with between 2 to 3 inches of straw, and I watered that down really well. And this way I will not have to heal up my potatoes. Once they start coming through, I can add more straw, and if I see potatoes coming, I add straw on top of that. The straw acts the same as the soil that you heal up around the potatoes, which is mainly to keep the sun away from your potatoes that are growing. These are determinate potatoes. They will all grow at one level, so I shouldn't have to add too much more straw. But the straw also keeps down weeds, and it'll help keep the ground moist, and it will help keep the ground cool, and it still allow the potatoes to get all the sunlight that they want. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about potatoes and about doing them in straw. Some people actually just put the potatoes, nestle them in the ground, don't cover them with soil, and just put the straw on top of them. But I prefer to put just a little bit of soil over top of them, plant them normally, and that way they're not too deep to dig, and the soil will keep the straw will keep the ground moist, and it'll be easy to just pull those potatoes up come 80 to 100 days from now, because all these were 80 to 100 days, and I should have potatoes, hopefully. So remember, like, share, subscribe, dream big, follow that dream, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye everybody.